All right, review of the literature review. And in this lecture, we will talk about purpose of literature review and then process of doing literature review and what kind of source and database and then how we summarizing information, what basic guideline of summarizing information. And then also basic guideline of interpreting that information, summarized information. So what are options and what are strategy to interpreting those information, right? And then we will go over writing the introduction and literature review, more specific, literature review guide, right? All right, purpose of literature review. Number one, it is centered around the research question and hypothesis. Always. The most important thing is what? In your entire quantitative research, any researches, what is the research question? And then previous lecture we talk about identification of research problem. And then I suggest two different things. One, intellectual merit. What's new? And then the other one is what? Broad impact. What's big deal in practice? Right? And then you basically you need the other way around and the other way to describing those two criterion as we call as a merit of research. What is the big deal on your research? Intellectual merit, broad impact. Because you claimed it in chapter one. I believe this is very important and this one has a strongly this is very new, right? And then this might have a huge impact on practice. You claimed it. Literature review is what? Backing up that claim. So you need to putting up the lots of literatures and support those claims. What is big deal on your research question? Significance of study, back up onto your claim on your research question significance. Are you with me? That's a number one. Number two, and then also what? Which one has been done? Because again, it's our sincere responsibility. We need to dig up nearly every piece of information done. That's actually prerequisite. We don't want to do, oh, you someone else already did it with your research question. That's very, very bad. So basically we have to search everything up to date. It's researchers' responsibility. It's not like a do my best, I've done it. No. If you want to be a good research, you have to find out all up to date information, all everything, especially new information. Like 2018 publication is very important. One of the most important thing, you want to make sure that literature is not overlapped with your current study, right? And then also what? Third one, especially if you had a hypothesis. Hypothesis, difference between research question and hypothesis, you need to add your gut. I believe, right? I hypothesize A has a positive effect on B. And then you start to why you believe so, justifying that piece of information. Number one, again, like for example, teacher turnaround. Why teacher turnaround is important? Once upon a time, there was elephant. Elephant is important, and why elephant is important? And then number two, why you decide to to explain elephant, and then we bring up the giraffe, right? To explain elephant, we bring up the giraffe, like violence, community violence score, right? Why community violence score is important to explaining our elephant, which is teacher turnover. So you need to do literature review on the factor, and then relationship between factor. Why giraffe is related to elephant? So that is also need to be backed up by literature. And then third one is what? Why you believe giraffe is possibly effect onto elephant, non-negative, not and instead of negative, right? So that one need to also be backed up by literature, right? And then also answering this again is why important. See, all those justifications, I mean, all those claims, what you made it in chapter one, this is my research question, this is my hypothesis, this is two factors, and and then this is a significant answering this research question or testing this hypothesis is significant, need to be justified in chapter two. I know summary of those literature review need to be done it in first chapter, right? But more like more detailed, systematic way organizing all those piece of information must to show up in literature review part. Sometimes you use some measures. So to measure anxiety, I like to use this particular measurement tool. Include that measurement tool in literature review, who developed it, how validated it, right? How reliable scores will be came out from that instrument. All those detailed piece of what you will do, what you're supposed to do, need to be analyzed in literature review part. Okay. All right. Again, conducting a literature review, keyword, phrase, identify keyword, phrase, and then also what? Construct name, right? And then you identify source of information, sometimes book, sometimes database. Nowadays we are doing, electronic database, right? Using keyword search. It's a lot easier, faster than before. Traditionally, we don't have that electronic database system, so we have to go to the library. We literally physically find out alphabetical order to keyword and search, and do it. But nowadays, you can do it right now because everything is connected to internet. You can just dumping into keyword and university database. You have access to university database system, literature review system, and they will searching out literature for you, right? Abundant of those information, and then you can read and download those PDF. Most of PDF from website from in front of your computer instead of we have to have a visit to library, right? Welcome to 21st century. And at some point, the Google had a contains tons of information, right? We don't have to use those special database, but um, academic work we must use reliable source, which is a lot of academic database. Again, library.gwu.edu, they have tons of information sorted by journal, subjects, field, and you can easily play around with that, search. All right. Again, book, scholarly journal article, and reviews, and these are typical source. If you search, and then they will give you typically either book or journal article or review, right? Or sometimes nowadays we have a digital, video interviews, and those things are also available in um, um, more than non-verbal type of, um, the instead of that, books and readings, and you can hear um, more like a qualitative type of database or also digitalized, right? You can watch documentary, etc., right? All right. Same thing, media article, report, the dissertation abstract, non-academic internet resources, all those things are related to literature review. Nowadays, Wikipedia is big deal, and if I don't have a big, for me, if I don't have a big objection, I would rather use Wikipedia definition sometimes. The reason is Wikipedia definition, people agree to each other. And if the book author authority is very important who defined that one in what book, right? The other book defined that exactly same concept differently. The book is good, very reliable source, prestigious, publisher did it, very famous author. But sometimes, nowadays, this, group intelligence is preferred. Over time, I believe Wikipedia will win. That kind of source of information will be prevail. If you're working with Alexa, if you ask anything through Alexa, Alexa based the most of definition of Alexa came out of from what? Google search, and Google search highly value Wikipedia. So we learn those definitions from Wikipedia naturally. Anyway, but in depth knowledge, we need to use other source of information. But quick definition, I will always check in Wikipedia definition. It's that is good enough. I'd rather use Wikipedia definition, even statistical analysis. All right, other search engine, etc., etc. Source of information. Primary source is someone who said that one. Secondary source is someone who write some other people said it, right? And lecture note is not a primary source. Why? Because our lecture note is summarized by me and other, instructors on the book, right? So whenever we want to cite something going on our lecture note, unless instructor said it, this is my text, you must cite book instead of lecture note. But the entire this our discussions are came out from our lecture note. I mean textbook. So lecture note should be considered as a secondary source, and primary source of our lecture note is the textbook. All right. Okay. Same thing. Web, dissertation, books, and blah blah blah. Right. Priority. Um, Conducting database research. Again, nowadays people are so good at search using search engine, and even though Google search engine is different from our database search engine, right? But pretty much the same. And then we Google search engine is the using the idea of how other people value source of resources, because Google search engine algorithm itself is which source, if there's a multiple source of information, which one need to be rely on first, or higher ranking on search result, right? That is exactly they copy the idea itself with how we practically doing an academic journal article search, and then they developing very very strong search engine and changing the world, right? Google changed the world, and then nowadays traditional academic search engine copy Google engine. So that's the reason why, because electronic version digital search engine performance of the Google they provided is a lot stronger than us, stronger than the other one, right? So pretty much the same idea, right? People cite more with more value, and then recent information and frequently update content we value more, and then also well organized piece we value more, etc., etc. Right? And the keywords are more matching, we value more, right? So there's a tons of thousands of results, but they sorting out those search results for you to choose. The first one is more relevant. Relevancy sorted out by order. Right? All right, try to locate it up to 50 sources in initially. Yes, and then also dissertation, and we don't have that. We don't have maximum stuff, but some, when I was a doctoral student, years ago, well, there was one department and one, like for example, computer science and that department, they kind of, to become a dissertation, you need to search at least 100 journal article. That was like sort of informal guideline. You need to review at least 100 journal article to claim your literature review as a doctoral dissertation. So again, there's no Bible. Bible never dictates the number of the journals you have to include in your journal article, but the more the better. At some point, ideally, we have to review every relevant journal article. That was actually guideline. Okay, summarizing and organizing. Number one, annotated bibliography, and literature review, and sometimes we do annotated bibliography development. Annotated bibliography is not just paraphrasing someone else's dissertation, abstract, and conclusion. You need to add what is big deal, more like evaluative component you must add. What is the role of this literature review out of the big picture, right? So, and then you also need to evaluate the author's claim is how legitimate, how strongly those claims were made, well structured, right? So you adding that piece of evaluation component on the top of the summary, what's going on in that literature, will we call as annotative bibliography. Abstract is who did it abstract? Author did it, right? So this is also nice summary of that literature, but that is written by the author. The annotated bibliography is you write a summary, including those evaluation on those entire journal article. Biggest mistake is we paraphrasing someone else's abstract and then we oh I did an annotated bibliography, but no, that's not. You just paraphrased someone else's work. Right? Different, right? Group into category, always do, because tons of literature review, and then when you're organizing this literature review is related to teacher turnover. This literature review is related to community violence for education issue, right? This literature review is related to how we measure, teacher, job satisfaction measure, right? So you need to group into all those literature, organize and those literature review into categories and what you like to do. All right, interpretation, critical review. What do you mean by critical? Number one, you check consistency. Again, consistency, internal reliability is very important. Interpretations, data collections, and organizations, and processing data is consistent or not. And also, their measures are what? If they collect the data and they use some kind of instrument, those instrument is accurate, internally consistent or not, right? That's another very important thing we have to critically um, critical review is investigate in more details. And also generalizability, whether this study will be generalizable, replicable, right? All those piece of informations are important in critique review, right? I mean, annotated bibliography portion, right? Any gaps in discussion, and then also literature review, adequacy of limitation section, because there is obvious in any study had a limitation, but that authors are fully describing that limitation or not is very important. I don't believe there's a perfect research study, no limitation at all, right? Any study had a limitation. We are limited human being. Any work, what we done it will be limited, right? But understanding that limitation, discussion of that limitation is very important part of thoughtful research, which is good research. Because if you start to hide them and then start to mislead, even though there's a good thing there, don't hide. If there's some not, a limitation is not a dark side. Limitation is what future work, and you whether you do it or let other people do it, and then describe that limitation to overcome that limitation. Let other people overcome that limitation in future. Right? All right. Where is it? What happened? Review of literature review. Okay. Summarizing, writing literature review. That's it. Writing the literature review, overview of research problem, theoretical framework, review article by category. We already talked about it, and a critical review or critiques on those reviews, and then you just identify any conflicts. Hey, this study said it doesn't matter. Violence doesn't matter, but this study find out violence is very important. So you identify those conflicts. Or but there's every study they you propose in literature review, providing consistent information. That's also important. Inconsistent. That's also important. It's your job. You summarize those patterns nicely, right? And current state of understanding. So what was missing? What was a common sense? What your research will be adding on to those common sense, and how your research result will be fill the gap. People love that, terminology, filling the gap on literature review. That will be one of the important um, purpose of your research, right? If you're interested in more, and then take a look at 69 and 70 of our textbook, pages 7. Again, common errors in literature review. Um, yeah, it's good to know, good to understanding potential mistake, what kind of mistake we could made. Um, it's not that much important to getting into every details, but it's good to know, right? All right, this is it for third lecture note, which is the review of